Welcome to the Vegas Insider channel here on YouTube as we look ahead to week 10 of college football with three SEC breakdowns, including the big one between Tennessee and Georgia in Athens. Kevin Rogers with you, and we are joined by Brian Edwards. And Brian, let's look at these three SEC matchups, starting with Georgia and Tennessee. Georgia ranked number one, last year's national champion. Tennessee has made its way into the top three. Both teams are undefeated. Georgia laying 8 at home. What do you like in this matchup?
I love Tennessee. 8-0 straight up, 7-1 against the spread. They are 2-0 both straight up and against the spread on the road. They went to Baton Rouge and blew LSU out, which is very rare. They are off just a dominant performance over Kentucky that was in a vintage look-ahead scenario. I mean, they covered by 4 touchdowns. They beat a quality Kentucky team, not a top 10 team, but definitely a top 20 team in my mind. And just absolutely dominated them. Did not let Will Levis. He threw for less than 100 yards. Did not let him run at all. Will Levis is very athletic. Usually makes plays scrambling, etc. Hooker, just another spectacular performance. 19 of 25, 245 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Also ran for a touchdown. He's been so great. I mean, great since he got to Tennessee, and he was real good at Vatech too. But this year, 71.2 completion percentage, 2,338 yards, 21-1 TDI&T ratio, 338 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, 4.6 yards per carry average. So now in his whole career in college, 8,177 passing yards, a insane 74-11 TDI&T ratio, 1,987 rushing yards and 24 touchdowns. And look, Georgia got some really good fortune against Florida. That it was almost perfect coverage by Amari Burney on that play that Bowers, it gets tipped twice and it just somehow gets a 73-yard touchdown. We had stopped them on a third down. They would have been punting from their own territory, but they unbelievably called a defensive pass interference when it should have been a no call, but if anything, offensive PI because McConkey pushed off. But that would have been a kind of a ticky-tacky offensive PI. But Jason Marshall did nothing to get a flag. They didn't call the PI on the bomb to Shorter when the Georgia guy clearly grabbed his jersey right in front of the ref. Oh, man. So, look, I just don't think Georgia's looked like the juggernaut that they were last year since the wins over Oregon and South Carolina. And Tennessee looks like a juggernaut week in and week out. And they added Cedric Tillman back to the mix, who was second-team All-SEC, who'd been out since week 3. They get him back last week. So not only do I like Tennessee plus the 8.5, and obviously that'll be my big play, but I'm also playing them on the money line. And I think they're going to go into Athens, and I think they're going to win outright. And I swear, I'm not this is not hyperbole. I'm not going to be surprised if they win by 2 touchdowns. I'm not going to be surprised if they deal out a little double digitization. Give me the Vols, more on the plus points, but also on the money line.
All right, so a big game there in Athens coming up on Saturday afternoon, Saturday night in Baton Rouge. It's Alabama and LSU, and the Crimson Tide laying 13. Brian Kelly getting his first taste of this rivalry. We've seen Kelly and Saban before the past, Alabama and Notre Dame, when they played in the national championship a long time ago. But now Kelly on the LSU sidelines. LSU has improved. They're playing better, but obviously a tough task here against Alabama. Who do you like here between the Crimson Tide and the Tigers?
LSU, give me the Tigers, who are 4-1-1 against the spread with 4 outright wins in their last 6 as home underdogs. They're off their 2 best performances of the year. They win 45-35 at Florida. They beat previously undefeated Ole Miss 45-20. Jaden Daniels, it takes a while for, transfer QBs to develop chemistry with their wide receivers, but that is happened now. I mean, we've seen that in the last 2 games, 5 touchdown passes without an interception, and he's run for 6 touchdowns in the last 2 games. And if Alabama has struggled against a quarterback, or when they struggle, which is rare, but when they struggle against a quarterback, it's nearly always this kind of quarterback, the scrambling, dynamic quarterback, makes plays with his legs, and Daniels does that, with the best of them. And he's going to scramble for first downs. And now, this is going into the season, this was considered a top 10, for some top 5 wide receiving unit, and it had been very disappointing. And part of that was on Daniels earlier in the year. He was, taking off and running a little early. Don't get me wrong. When I was betting on LSU, I kind of liked it when he was taking off and running early. And I'm not against him doing that in this game. But the last couple of games, he's definitely been more patient hanging in the pocket, and it's resulted in a lot more explosive plays in the passing game. He had 349 passing yards against Florida. He had 121 rushing yards against Ole Miss. And look, Alabama, you ask any Alabama fan, they'll tell you this. They have just not been good on the road the last 2 years. They're 2-5 against the spread with 2 outright losses. However, they should have lost against Texas this year. I mean, if Ewers doesn't get hurt, they definitely lose. And Texas missed like a 19-yard field goal. Texas had all these other scoring opportunities, and it didn't cash in. And then also you look back last year, I mean, the Auburn game, if Tank Bigsby just doesn't run out of bounds, they lose that one. At Florida, Florida misses an extra point, therefore has to go for 2, doesn't get it, or else 2 made extra points. That game would have been going to overtime. But a lot of people forget about the 3 egregious as can be calls in the first quarter that Alabama got that were at least a 10 to 14 point swing in that game. So, I mean, Alabama could have lost 5 road games in the last 2 years, and they are 2-5 against the spread. And I made the number 7. I'm sorry. No. My apologies. I made it 8.5. Yeah, so I think it's way too rich. I like LSU, and not as confident saying like Tennessee on the money line, but I'll have a little bit on the money line with LSU.
All right, and now let's look at our final SEC matchup. We got the 2 lightweights out of the way. We have the heavyweights now. South Carolina and Vanderbilt, Brian. And South Carolina, 6.5-point favorite here on the road. The Gamecocks were tripped up by Missouri last week, and we know Vandy's had their problems. But do you think South Carolina bounces back here after last week's loss? And they've had some problems on the road as well. I know they won at Kentucky earlier this year. There was no Levis for the Wildcats. But what do you think here of South Carolina and Vandy?
Yeah, I'm going to go with South Carolina minus 6.5. I know South Carolina's off a bad performance, and I know that they kind of depend on Beamer ball, special teams plays to, because they're not very good offensively. They had 2 block punts for touchdowns against Georgia State. They had a kick return for a touchdown against A&M. They kind of need those type of plays. But look, this is Vandy. Okay, look, the teams that have been decent, the Vandy played, they got killed. They lost by 20 to Wake at home. They lost by 52 at Bama. They lost by 24 to Ole Miss, by 55 to Georgia. Now, I know Missouri's decent. Missouri's could easily have a lot better record than they do. But, it was a 17-14 final. But Vandy got a defensive touchdown, and they got like an 85-yard touchdown pass. It was like around 80 for sure. And then that was the only play they made offensively the whole game at Missouri. Missouri missed a short field goal. They fumbled in the red zone. Like, in other words, the 3-point loss at Missouri really shouldn't have been that close. And look, I know that South Carolina's 4-game winning streak was a bit fraudulent, but they're way more than 7 points better than Vandy. And they're in bounce back mode here. And they still got good vibes going around that program. I think South Carolina, I made it 11, and it's 6.5, 7. I got to go with South Carolina.
All right, so to review Brian's 3 best bets for Saturday inside the SEC, he's taking the points with Tennessee against Georgia. Also, he's going to grab the points with LSU against Alabama, and he is going to back South Carolina on the road against Vanderbilt. Brian, as always, we appreciate the time. Best of luck. We'll talk to you again next week.
Yeah, and be sure to check out the Bet CFB pod that'll drop Thursday morning.
All right. That is Brian Edwards. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching. And as always, best of luck with your bets.